Ambassador Zixthala of the Valorian Empire couldn't suppress the clicking sound her mandibles made, the equivalent of laughter among her kind. Across the gleaming conference table aboard the neutral station, Harmony, the human representative, sat quietly, his pale skin almost translucent under the harsh artificial lighting. "You must understand our position," Zixthala said, her four arms gesturing dramatically. "The Galactic Council has reviewed humanity's application for membership 17 times. Each time the conclusion remains the same. Your species is simply too delicate." The human, who had introduced himself as Dr. Marcus Chen, adjusted his glasses, those primitive optical correctors that had amused the entire delegation. "Delicate? Look at yourself," interjected General Krex of the Thanoid Confederation, his rocky, mineral-based hide gleaming like polished granite. "Your bones break from simple falls. Your skin tears at the slightest contact. You require artificial environments to survive in space. Most concerning of all, you die from microscopic organisms that wouldn't even register on our biological sensors." Around the table, representatives from 12 different species nodded in agreement. The Zephyrians, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline shells, pulsed with what could only be interpreted as amusement. The aquatic Deepholm delegates bubbled in their environmental suits, their version of chuckling. Dr. Chen remained silent for a long moment, studying the datapad in front of him. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "You're absolutely right," he said quietly. "We are fragile." This admission sent ripples of satisfaction through the assembly. Finally, the humans would accept their place as a protected species, confined to their small corner of the galaxy under the Council's benevolent supervision. "However," Dr. Chen continued, "I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what fragility means." Before anyone could respond, the station's alarm system erupted in a cacophony of warning signals. The lights shifted to emergency, red as the AI's voice echoed through the chamber. "Unknown vessel approaching. Hostile intent confirmed. All personnel to battle stations." Through the massive viewport, a sleek black ship materialized, a Shadowkin raider, one of the most feared pirate vessels in known space. Its hull was composed of adaptive dark matter, capable of phasing through most defensive barriers. The ship's weapons powered up with an ominous green glow. "Impossible," General Krex rumbled, his stone-like features shifting with concern. "This is neutral space. The station's shields should prevent any aggressive action." The Shadowkin vessel fired, and the delegates watched in horror as the energy beam passed directly through the station's shields as if they weren't there. The beam struck the hull with devastating force, and the entire station shuddered. Emergency force fields activated to contain the breach, but the damage was clear. The station's defenses were useless against Shadowkin technology. "The raiders must be desperate," Zixthala clicked nervously. "Attacking a council meeting will bring the wrath of 12 civilizations down on them." A second blast rocked the station, and this time the lights flickered ominously. The ship was closing in for a boarding action. Standard Shadowkin protocol was to capture high-value prisoners for ransom or intelligence extraction. Dr. Chen stood up calmly and walked to a wall panel. "I need to access the station's maintenance tunnels," he said, inputting a code sequence. "Are you insane?" General Krex boomed. "Those tunnels run along the outer hull. The radiation alone would kill most species in minutes, and if the raiders breach the hull, you'll die instantly from explosive decompression," finished Zixthala. "Even if you could somehow survive that, the tunnel system doesn't connect to any critical systems. What could you possibly hope to accomplish?" Dr. Chen was already removing his jacket and tie. Underneath, his human form looked even more vulnerable. Thin, limbs, soft flesh, no natural armor or defensive adaptations. "You're right about humans being fragile," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "But you misunderstand what that means." He paused at the maintenance hatch and turned back to the assembled delegates. "Every species in this room evolved on worlds that were, relatively speaking, paradise. Stable gravity, breathable atmospheres, abundant resources. Your strength comes from having advantages. Natural armor, energy manipulation, phase-shifting abilities. The hatch opened with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for a human. Humans evolved on a death world, Dr. Chen continued. A planet that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. We're fragile because we can't afford not to be. Without another word, he disappeared into the tunnel system. The delegates stared at the empty hatch in bewilderment. Through the viewport, they could see the Shadowkin vessel positioning itself for final approach. Its boarding pods were already launching. He's committed suicide, General Krex said flatly. Humans may be persistent, but even they can't survive. An explosion outside cut him off mid-sentence. Through the viewport, they watched in stunned silence as a section of the Shadowkin ship's hull simply crumpled inward. It was impossible. That hull was made of adaptive dark matter, theoretically impermeable to physical attack. Another explosion, this one closer to the ship's engine core. Then another. What's happening? Zixathala clicked frantically at her scanner. The ship's integrity is failing, but I'm not detecting any weapons fire, no energy signatures, nothing that could... A final massive detonation tore through the Shadowkin vessel's core. The ship broke apart in a brilliant flash, its debris scattering harmlessly into space. The emergency lighting on the station shifted back to normal as the threat level dropped to 0. 20 minutes later, Dr. Chen emerged from the maintenance hatch. His clothes were torn, his skin was scraped and bleeding from a dozen minor cuts, and his breathing was labored. He looked exactly like what he was, a fragile human who had just survived something that should have killed him. How? General, Krex's voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Chen straightened his torn shirt and retrieved his glasses from the conference table. The station's maintenance tunnels run through the outer hull support structure. When the Shadowkin ship positioned itself for boarding, it had to come within 30 meters of the hull to extend its docking mechanisms. He held up a small device covered in his own blood. This is a standard human emergency beacon. We carry them because we're too fragile to survive most accidents. I modified it into an improvised explosive using components from the tunnel's environmental systems. But the hull of that ship, Zixathala protested. Adaptive dark matter can't be penetrated by physical force, Dr. Chen finished. Yes, I read the technical specifications. Fascinating material. Completely impervious to energy weapons, phase attacks, even molecular dissolution. Unfortunately for them, it has one weakness. He sat back down at the conference table, ignoring the blood seeping from his cuts. It's not designed to handle kinetic impact from someone stupid enough to physically punch through it. The silence in the room was deafening. You see, Dr. Chen continued, when you're fragile, you learn to be creative. When you can't survive direct confrontation, you learn to find another way. When your entire species evolves on a world that wants you dead, you learn that sometimes the most impossible solution is the only one that works. He looked around the table at the assembled representatives of 12 advanced civilizations. You asked about human fragility. Here's what you need to understand. We're not fragile despite our strength. We're strong because we're fragile. Dr. Chen stood up and gathered his papers. The Council can approve or deny humanity's application as it sees fit, but I think today has demonstrated that the galaxy might benefit from having a few more impossible solutions available. As he walked toward the exit, his quiet words carried clearly through the stunned silence. After all, when you're fragile enough, sometimes the only way forward is straight through. The human delegation was unanimously approved for full council membership 3 hours later. Ambassador Zixathala would later note in her official report that it was the first time in galactic history that a membership application had been approved by acclamation, with 0 dissenting votes. She did not mention that it was also the first time she had ever seen a Shadowkin vessel destroyed by someone using their bare hands and a modified emergency beacon. Some impossibilities, she decided, were better left unexamined.